All right, everyone, welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 10 recap. It was a tale of, how should we describe this? Halves this week. Three matchups were complete blowouts, not even close. And three matchups came down to Monday night. Well, no, only one of them came down to Sunday night. But they were nail biters down to the wire. So yeah, it was a half and half week, three blowouts and three nail biters. So yeah. Anything else? Scoring was up. Well, not necessarily across the board. But yeah, some interesting things happened this week, as we all know. But what is going on with Ed? Wow, I'm just here looking at Ed Logger's avatar for this week, and it says Beans Bitch. I don't understand. Do I know? Should I know what's going on here, Ed? Oh, because you got absolutely mauled this past week by the Dubsy Hooligans by nearly 100 points. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So let's talk about week 10. First off, as always, we talk about the defending champions matchup, and that still remains me, much to the chagrin of all of you guys. The Wizard of Wimber was going up against Shawshank Athletics. Josh trying to get win number 6 and get a little bit closer to the playoffs. Wizard trying to keep pace with Possum Magic, hoping maybe he falters somewhere along the way and get a chance to sneak up to first place, even if it's only temporary. But the Wizard of Wimber, as we all know, flirts a little bit with the all-time single-week Tonto's Demise record of 275 point something, which still stands. Let me go, actually, what is I know it's 275. Yahoo, hold on here. 275.6 is the actual total. But couldn't quite get there. Whatever, not a big deal. But rather more important to get a victory here, as the Wizard of Wimber goes for an even 258 to Shawshank's 166.2. As pointed out in the lineup, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the Baltimore Ravens defense. I believe, 167.4, I believe, was the number, the total for Burrow, Chase, and Baltimore. 167.4, which those three would have defeated Josh all by themselves, would have beaten Biscuits, would have beaten Gags, would have beaten Detling, would have beaten Zach, Justin, Hillbillies, and Ed. Would have beaten and Disco would have beaten those three. It's just silly to me that happened, and it's never probably going to happen again. Can Baltimore and the Bengals play like every other week or two? Like maybe like once a month? That would be great. But anyway, yeah, it was just silly. Yeah, I know it. You guys know it. But anyway, thanks to the double binks, Burrow goes for 83 points, and Jamar Chase goes for 66.5. Puka goes for just under 19. Shakir, about 12. Rashad White, 19. Tracy, 18.5. And then the guys who let me down in my pursuit of the single week record, Jimmy Huber can thank Jake Ferguson for 4.5 and Travis Etienne for 5.5. Fairbairn missing that field goal, 50-some yard field goal near the end of that Texans game that might have won it for them. That would have been a nice extra boost there. But he still got me about 12, 13 points. And the Ravens defense, I believe, even in this high-scoring blowout, they still won the game. Again, they won the game. I still managed to somehow get 18 points, to scrap 18 points out of this matchup for the Ravens defense. Anyway, Josh, not much to say. I don't to be said about this. When your opponent just has one of those weeks. What do we got? Flacco going for 37. Garrett Wilson, Drake London, and George Pickens. 9, 17.5, and 20.5, respectively. Pollard and Swift go for 10.5, 7.5. Kelsey goes for 20.5. The glorious return of Christian McCaffrey. Spoiled before it even happened on Thursday night. Sorry, Josh. Said you've been waiting 10 weeks for today, and you finally get your boy back, only to run into the best game of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow's life. McCaffrey goes for 16.5, mostly on receiving stats there. Butker goes for about 9, and your Steelers defense goes for Yahoo says 9. Yahoo has 9. You're 155, so to 166.8.2. Might have to go get my calculator here. Yeah. 9, I guess, to 18. I think your defense also had 18. All right, that was getting to be a little bit a little over the top, a little too much there. But anyway, what do we got? Josh 166, a respectable score. He actually would have beaten a lot of people this week, but it was not enough to get past the Wizard. He moves up to 8-2, stays in second place, while Shawshank drops to 5-5, although is still up there in fourth place. How about we do the 3 blowouts first? Get those out of the way. Possum Magic versus Darkwing Jet. Possum gets the victory, staying in first place. No upset from Justin this week. A matchup he needed to win to try to keep his playoff hopes alive. So this is one of the important weeks where things really could be shifting up and down in terms of your playoff positioning and standings here. But Possum gets the victory, 176.9 to 122.8. All right. Lamar Jackson had a bink to somebody whose name I don't even know. So he had 63.8. Scary Terry, 16.5. Justin Jefferson, about 10. Odunze, 5.3. Derrick Henry goes for 14. Javonte Williams, only 2.7. Kincaid gets injured. I'm not sure the severity of that, but he went for 4.5. Demario Douglas goes for 9. Moody goes for about 9. And the Minnesota Vikings defense, Yahoo says 18. Looks like you got a 24-point bump. 24 to a 27 be too much? Maybe not 27, up to like 35? No. Would that be 30? No, it'd be like 45. Was it that much? No, because you got the big... Disco is grinding his teeth right now. You get that bink from Lamar Jackson, so that takes you up to 51, so about 24. Yeah, so about 40 or so from the Minnesota defense. Strong, solid bunch scores. Fortunately, you had almost single-digit scores the rest of the way through there. Possum not. It's gonna come back. That scores like that are gonna come back to bite you eventually, but it didn't happen this week. Darkwing Jet gets 41 from Josh Allen. CeeDee Lamb, whole Cowboys offense, I think, is going to be struggling on the struggle bus from here on out without Dak Prescott. Only 8.5. Xavier Worthy, after negative points last week, right? Not helping your cause. Once again, not helping. But at least he had positive points this week. He got you 2. Jameson Williams, 8.5. Mixon, 17. Kyron, 11.2. Cotton goes for 8.5. Bucky Irving, 17.7. McLaughlin, your Tampa Bay kicker, he goes for about 8. And I believe this was correct. The Jets defense, 1 point from the Jets defense. Those guys have been hurting you all year long, Justin. Keep plugging them in. Hoping for the best. I mean, what? Just everything about the Jets this year it's become comical. Like, I don't even understand. Like, Aaron Rodgers is just, he's obviously just washed. Now, all the changes they make, they fire coaches and they do all this stuff, and it's like they still suck. Every week, Aaron Rodgers is like, oh, well, we're still going to make a playoff run. We just got to regroup and get it started next week. He's been saying that for like 5 weeks. But anyway, I don't know if he realizes how ridiculous he is to listen to at this point in time. But yeah, unfortunately, Darkwing Jet said he couldn't get it done this week. He drops to 4-6. Possum Magic moves up to 8-2. He remains in first place. Unfortunately, Darkwing, he drops to 4-6. He is now all the way down in 10th place. And then we got rising from the dead. We've got the XXII hooligans, who had completely given up on the season many weeks ago. Rising from the dead, coming back, biting Ed, taking on that, like hands reaching out from the ground, from the grave, reaching out, grabbing Ed, and pulling him down into the ground with him. XXII hooligans, biggest blowout of the season, I believe, 215.25 to Ed Loggers, 119.2. Which I should mention that Ed was one of the 3 teams left in the knockout pool, and Ed, obviously, this 119 was not enough to keep you alive, so you were eliminated this week, and we will talk about the rest when we get to the end here. Anyway, XXII hooligans, everything pretty much everything goes right for him this week. Purdy goes for 55, Waddle 8.5, but Bateman 17.5, Debo 12.5, Dobbins 8.5, Chase Brown 22.5, Kittle 14.5, Chuba Hubbard, Hubba Bubba. I mean, what this guy is never going to stop. I don't know what is going on. How is this even possible? Like, how did he fall? This guy falls so far in the draft. Their team sucks, yet he is putting up monster fantasy scores every single week. Guys have to be beating down your door, Kevin, making trade offers for him. But I don't know. Man, what you could possibly be doing if you're pushing them aside. If he's you're eyeing him up for a keeper next year. Depends. We got to see what happens with Brooks, how they're going to ease him in. But they did just sign Hubbard to a big contract extension. So, did I say he scored another 28 points this week? He has been he's got to be one of the top fantasy running backs for the whole season. Behind maybe Derrick Henry. And who else? I don't even know. Saquon, maybe? I mean, his weekly point totals are just 11, 30, 25, 17, 15, 11, 9, 21, and 28. Like, man. Dicker the kicker goes for about 9. And then another big factor in this matchup, Patriots defense. Yahoo says 18. Looks like you got about, and I'm not breaking with tradition. You jumped about 15, 18 points, right? 20, 21. Would 21 be too much? I think so. Maybe not. But yeah, they had a pretty good score. 39. That would make it 39, almost 40 points for your defense, which means you got almost 100 points from your buns, and then solid scores in the middle there, putting you over 200. And embarrassing Ed Logger this week. Kirk Cousins goes for 38.3. Your receivers, 9, 7.5, 9.5 respectively. Saquon lets you down. Saquon and Stevenson actually both go for basically the same score, 8.8, 8.7. Hunter Henry in tight end, 2.5. Austin Eckler going off with no bang bang again this week. He scores 2 touchdowns, gets you 18 points. The lone bright spot on your lineup, Matt Gay goes for about 7. And your Bears defense. This was a matchup of defense versus defense. And the Patriots came up in Chicago on the way opposite side of this one. Ed, your defense, I believe, according to this, Yahoo is correct, and your score was 10. But yeah, so what do we got? Ed Logger could not get win number 6. He drops to 500. He is 5-5 in 6th place, while Dub C Hooligans unfortunately remains in the basement, but he is now 3-7. Trying to chase Gags, trying to get out of the basement. We'll see what happens. All right, then we had 3 close matchups here. One was decided on Sunday night. Let's do that one. That was Gags to Riches versus Biscuits and Porn. Gags gets the victory, 143.85 to 142.1. I forget what the difference was, but I think Gags had a bit of a lead. Not much, because it came down to Tank Dell versus Jamar Gibbs. I don't think anybody else from your teams was in it. I think it was just those two going head-to-head. Gags having a slim lead there. And Gibbs actually outscored Dell by about 4 points, 4.5. But Gags was able to hold on. And we were following this a little bit as it was happening. Excuse me. And Gibbs, Jamar Gibbs, not Jamar Chase, had a couple of short runs at the end of the game, but the matchup was basically tied. It was going to be right down to the wire. And I believe on the Texans' last possession, they threw a 9-yard pass to Tank Dell, and that was the difference maker. Because Gibbs was able to get a couple of yards, get Jim a little bit closer right after that, as they went down to get their game-winning field goal after the Texans missed their game-winning field goal. And that 1.9 that Gags got from that very last Tank Dell catch ended up being the margin of victory in this matchup, that one play. So, all right, we said 143.85 for Gags. Sam Darnold goes for just under 30. Tank Dell, 8.3. Brian Thomas, only 3.2. Did Disco sell you some fool's gold over there? D-Hop, only 9.5 after blowing up last week. James Conner, another solid year from him. 22.5 points. Kamara goes for 16. Pitts, 9.5. Downs in the flex, 14.2. Your kicker, Lutz, goes for 0. Because he missed both of his field goals. And Buffalo defense, even though Yahoo says 28, they did give up a lot of yards and everything, so you only got like extra 3 points, Gags. up to 31. Yeah, that only got you 60 from your buns, and said Connor and Dell. So obviously Dell came through. It's despite the 0 from your kicker and single digits from all your receivers, you were able to sneak this one out. For biscuits, Patrick Mahomes goes for 47.2. Mooney 14.5. Devontae Smith only 3.5 in a game where that was never even really competitive at all. McConkey goes for 7. Gibbs goes again 12.8. Najee goes for 11.5. Engram goes for 10. DJ Moore goes for 5.5. Aubrey goes for about 6.5. And your other end, the Kansas City Chiefs defense. A game the matchup should not have been this close, but they actually ended up winning. Obviously, the game they should have lost. But they got a blocked kick, and they ended up winning the game, so +3 instead of -3 for you there. Yahoo says 11. Looks like you got a 12 or so point bump for Jim to 23. But again, it was Dell versus Gibbs on Sunday night, and honestly, I think we'll get to that in probably the next matchup. But yeah, the Texans just as much as they dominated the first half of that game, they completely melted down in the second half of that game. It was like watching two completely different teams. It was just gross. If you were rooting for anything from the Texans, and Gags said Gags was able to get it, just barely sneak it out again with that last second Tank Dell reception. All right, with the victory, Gags moves up to 3-7. He remains in 11th place, just above Dub C, while Biscuits and Porn drops to 4-6. He is in 9th place, and his playoff hopes are getting slimmer by the week. Got to turn things around, guys. All right, what else did we got? We already mentioned that briefly here, so we were talking about the Texans game here. So Disco versus Hillbillies on PCP, Battle of the Podcasters, and I believe Hillbillies had was like a 17-point lead, something like that, 17.5, with Tyreek Hill and Ashan still left to play, and he was able to get it somewhere in the third quarter. I believe it was Tyreek Hill's touchdown pass, or touchdown reception, I should say, that put Disco on top for good. He gets the victory, 167.1 to 162.5. All right, for Disco, Hertz goes for 44.5, AJ Brown 16. Again, Tyreek Hill, most of his production came from that touchdown catch. Even though it was a short one there, he only had 16 yards total, 11.7. Noah Brown goes for 6.3. Bijan goes off for 32.5 points this week, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, catching passes, doing everything. Jets, not much to say about them. Underperforming. Brees again, 12.3. Dalton Schultz, the counter Stroud there for Brian here, ends up working just the way you wrote it up. He gets 9.5 points. Ashan, he said he went for 10.2, and Tyler said you were down 17.4, I think was the number, and Ashan and Tyreek combined to get you 21.9. So yeah, enough to get the victory. Tucker goes for 2. And the Chargers defense, Yahoo says 13. Looks like a 9-point bump for you to 22. It was enough to get past Hillbillies on PCP this week. The aforementioned CJ Stroud on fire in the first half of that game. Ice cold in the second half. Only ends up with only 29 points from your quarterback in a matchup where you lost by 4.5. That's basically, you take away one of those turnovers. Yeah, just he could not do anything in the second half of that game. It really was unbelievable. But Tisco was loving it. Let's see. Neighbors, Ridley and Quinton Johnston 10.5, 25. Two more receiving touchdowns for Calvin Ridley against Disco's Chargers defense. 25.5. Johnston, 10.5. Only 2 catches, but one of them was a touchdown. Another 100-yard game for Taylor. He goes for 17. Jalen Warren, 9.5. Taysom Hill, 7 points. I believe, I think it was I saw on Twitter, he actually had a bink taken back by a holding penalty. So this, another way this matchup could have gone the other way. Taysom Hill had a bink called back for a penalty. Then in the flex, since no Nico this week, Brian, Robert Woods, really? I know I say before, I know I've said in the past that like it's easy to sit here and say what you should have done in the past, blah blah blah, things like that. But no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just gonna say this is what you should have done, and it's not because I know that now. It's because you made the wrong choice. And why you picked Woods and not Mechie when C.J. Stroud likes Mechie? Robert Woods has not done anything. I still, like, when I saw that you picked up and plugged in Robert Woods, I was like, oh, God, why would you do that? Mechie was the guy. Mechie would have won you this matchup, my friend. Robert Woods hasn't done anything. And I'm pretty sure Mechie's on the waiver wire. Woods has done like 3, 2, 3, 6. I would have rolled a dice. I 100%. If I was you, I would have rolled the dice on Mechie and not Robert Woods. Not even a thought going into that. Anyway, Boswell goes for 4. And the Eagles defense, they tried their best. Yahoo says 27. Looks like you got an extra at least probably 18 points, up to about 45 from them. So big scores from them. But yeah, you only lost by 4.5, and all you needed was 35 points from C.J. Stroud. Couldn't get it done, and in a matchup that you needed to win, probably. This really puts a hurt on your playoff hopes. Hillbillies, although you said you feel like you're getting some opponents here coming up who are going to have some bye week issues, hoping that you're able to take this loss but turn things around and make a little run here at the end. Careful what you wish for. With the victory, Disco moves up to 6-4. He is the only team with that record. He is in 3rd place, while Hillbillies on PCP drops to 4-6, and they are down in 8th place. All right, last one. We got Yinzer Jags versus Balls Deep. Another close matchup. Yinzer Jags had the Stafford Cup connection on Monday night, but Detling, you don't have Cooper Kupp, cozied up there to Matthew Stafford. I'm pretty sure that's the reason why you did not win this matchup, as Balls Deep holds on to get the victory, 153.8 to 151.85. So just under 2 points there. Difference here. For Balls Deep, what do we got? No Packers for you this week. No Packers, no problem. You still get the job done. Daniel Jones goes for 34. Sutton goes for 19. Harrison, 16.5. Jennings also 16.5. Dave Montgomery, 12.5. Aaron Jones, 12. McBride, 11. Singletary in the flex, 5.5. Singletary in the flex, wow. 5.5 points. You are lucky man that you went with him. Although if you had plugged in Mike Williams, you still would have won this matchup. His only catch was a touchdown catch. But really, you're going to plug Mike Williams just coming over to the Steelers in his first week. Who knows how much playing time he was even going to get. Yeah, basically your whole team was on a bye or injured this week. Sterling Shepard was your only other option. Good thing you didn't pick him. Koo actually missed a bunch of field goals in this game. only got you 1 point. And then the Detroit Lions defense came through for you there on Sunday night, despite Goff throwing for like 5 interceptions. They got you looks like about an extra 12 points, up to 25. And it was just enough to get past the Yinzer Jags. Said the Stafford Cup connection, 43.5 from Stafford, and even 15 from Cup. But really just needed one more completion to Cooper Kupp, and this matchup would go the other way. Amon-Ra went for 18. Jay Coker, I don't even know what his first name is. Jalen Coker. I think we talked about him last week. Where are these guys' names coming from? Never would have thought you'd be relying on them on draft day here in week 10. He gets you 7. James Cook, 15.5. Rico Dowdle, 8.5. Gesicki, 7. A plug and play there from Thursday night. Almost did it myself. Actually, would have actually got me a little bit extra because I was going to drop Freiermuth and put him in the flex. I was going to throw Gesicki in the flex over ETN. Actually would have gained me a point or two. But anyway, Yinzer's had, who did he have in the flex there? Ray Davis. He came to his senses, put Laporta in there. Got you a touchdown, a couple catches, 15.5 points. New Orleans kicker group goes for about 8. And then the Giants defense, fool's gold for Detling this week. Somebody said, I think last week in the podcast, wondering why I didn't plug and play the Giants defense, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, I did. I felt bad. I just had a bad feeling about that matchup. Again, I thought that they were fool's gold this week. Turned out to be that was the case. As they only got you, Yahoo says 10. I believe the actual score was 13 from your defense. And should mention, too, a couple things about this. Just to rub the salt in the wound there for Yinzer Jags. If you had started your San Francisco defense, which you drafted to be your starting team, you win this matchup. If you had... I guess not really technically isn't your fault, but the Rams trying to catch up in that game last night. They were down 11 points, and they decided to, instead of going for the touchdown with about half a minute to go, they decided on third down, they decided to kick the field goal and then try the onside kick to try to get the, and then they would have needed the touchdown and 2-point conversion. So instead of trying on third down to get that touchdown and maybe get Stafford at least another 5 points or 6 points and possibly a touchdown to Kupp and win this matchup, nope. They kicked it on third down, took the points, and then obviously failed on the onside kick attempt. And that was the end of the game. And that was the end of this matchup. Yeah. So Yinzer Jags, both of these teams are now 5-5. Balls deep. He is in 5th place, while Yinzer Jags he drops down to 7th place. All right, those were all the matchups in Week 10. Rivalry week, according to Yahoo. Really, I know it's just, guys, there seems to be some confusion about it. It's just an automatic standard thing that Yahoo does every year in Week 10. I don't know why. I think one time I tried to go through and set the schedule in Week 10 so it was more like an actual rivalry week. I know I've tried to do it in the past, but it ended up just not being able to. Trying to do that in Week 10 and then get the rest of the weeks to sort themselves out, for some reason, was never able to get that aligned right. I think it was, back in the day, probably like Detling versus Brian, me versus Jim or Justin maybe, like Gags versus Ed, things like that, just matchups like that. Disco versus Dub C, just random things, but could never quite figure out how to get the rest of the weeks to aligned properly. It was always messing things up. But yeah, it's just a random thing that Yahoo does. Does not correlate in any way to Tonto's demise officially at all. And like I said, Ed Lager, he was eliminated from the knockout pool this week, which conveniently means the final week of the knockout pool is me versus Disco. And like I said, conveniently, we play each other this week in one of the weeks where I wish I was just out already, because this is one of the weeks where I really, really don't believe I stand much of a chance of getting a victory. This week and next week are my bye week blues weeks. So yeah, it's going to be basically not handing Disco a victory here, but for me, it's going to be a very difficult. I have like no running backs to play for me this week. But anyway, so yeah, take a look here at the standings. We've got Gags and Dub C trying to pull themselves back up. Really, Gags, you're only one. You're pretty far behind on points, but you're only one game behind, being in like 8th place. Dub C too, you're really far behind on points. Even if you were to win this week, actually, I think you guys play each other here in week 11. Is it right? Yeah, Gags versus Dub C. So yeah, neither of you, only one of you is going to be able to make any headway this week. The loser of that matchup is probably all but out, I would guess. That would be one of you is definitely getting loss number 8, and that is probably going to be the end of you for this season. Best you could do then would be 6 and 8, and you guys are both, especially Dub C, you're far too far behind on points, I think, to really catch up. Even if you get a victory this week, it's going to be tough sledding. Just trying to catch up to these other guys in terms of overall points. So we got 3, 4, and 6s. Hillbillies, Biscuits, and Darkwing. Who do they play this week? Hillbillies gets Ed, who's 5. We got 4, 5, and 5s. Shawshank, Zach, Ed, and Detling. So let's see. We'll go. So the 4 and 6s who are trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. So Hillbillies, he's going up against Ed. What else do we got? Darkwing, Justin, he's going up against also 5 and 5 Shawshank. Justin trying to keep his season alive. And then we got Biscuits and Porn. So all 3 of you 4 and 6 teams are playing a 5 and 5. So it could definitely have some playoff implications here, as Biscuits is going up against Yinzer Jags. Really, it could shake out that all of you could end up being 5 and 6. That could be 6. We could have 6 teams at 5 and 6 after this week. Who else? Who is missing from that? Zach gets Possum Magic this week. He's 5 and 5 going up against the first place team. So I obviously get Disco. Did we miss anything else? That's it. Those are all the matchups. Bye weeks this week. What do we got? The Giants, the Cardinals, the Buccaneers, and the Panthers. So yeah, I have like no running backs for this week. So yeah, these are going to be good matchups in terms of playoff positioning. You guys, looking at you guys, you 4 and 6 teams. Jim, Justin, Brian, you're all playing. Your destiny is in your hands. All 3 of you are playing 5 and 5 teams. If you want to make a run, this is the time to do it. You don't want to fall any further behind than you already are. So yeah, these 3 matchups might be the matchups of the year for all of you guys, because we've only got 3 more after this. So yeah, this is going to be a big, important week for you guys, you 4 and 6s, Brian, Justin, and Jim. You need to get victories. If you lose, you are going to be reeling in terms of the playoff hunt. All right. Then said we got the battle of the basement there, Gags and Dub C. One of you guys is probably going to get loss number 8 and be all but eliminated. And then that's basic. Yeah. What else is there? Oh yeah, Zach versus Possum. He doesn't want to drop down. So Zach could also be 5 and 6 after this week, which would mean what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We could have 7. We could have 7 teams be 5 and 6 after this week. And if we have 7, 5, and 6 teams, that means either Gags or Dub C is going to be 4 and 7, and possibly only 1 game behind all of those guys with 3 weeks left to go. So yeah, that's feeding a fed horse here. It's still an important matchup for Gags and Dub C here all the way down in week 11. What do we said for the knockout pool matchup? Disco versus me. He's heavily favored. He's pretty set. He's got all his guys. I basically no running backs. I am basically being forced to start Braylon Allen against your Breece Hall because I really have nothing else. What else? I mean, what do I have? So no White, no Tracy, no Tampa Bay. Maybe we'll get T. Higgins back this week, see what happens. But yeah, other than most of my starting lineup is intact. He's got his full starting lineup, but again, being forced to start Allen and ETN in, gross. But yeah, fully expecting. Unfortunately, this has to happen because I know Disco will never let you forget. This is going to be a matchup as I'm already expecting a humiliating defeat. You're going to get that knockout pool money. We're not going to split it. I always hated when other people did that. There's no reason to do that. It's winner take all. You made it this far. Whoever gets it deserves it. And is there anything else? No real. Everybody stayed fairly healthy this week. Dak's injury was last week. He's gone for the year. Doesn't really affect Detling too much because he wasn't really using him. But it cascades down to all the other Cowboys skill players there. CD, Tolbert, Ferguson for me. Dowdle, who knows? Cooper Rush has stepped in and been okay in the past, so we'll see what happens. Maybe this past week the Eagles' defense was just too much for them, so we'll see. They've got who do the Cowboys have this week? I think they got another tricky one. Houston, who just had a good game against Detroit. So yeah, I think that's everything that we needed to talk about. Standings wise, knockout pool, everything. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, watching, or whatever it is you do. Kevin, your dog, I believe, took a shit right on my chest. I am not into that kind of stuff. I don't know how many times I have to tell you. Believe me, I can still smell. It's been difficult to work with here, but I need somebody to come clean that up. If you could do me a favor. Yeah. Thanks for listening, watching, or whatever it is you do. Let's pray to the fantasy gods that all of our players meet or exceed expectations. Nobody gets hurt. Everybody has a good time. And we come back here next week to talk about what should be a very high playoff implication week here in 11. I'm personally praying that we get the 7 teams all going to 5 and 6. That would make things fun to watch. I'm expecting you guys to be pleased this week watching Disco mop the floor with my team. So I already said fully expecting that to happen. But is that it? I think so. All right, guys. Thanks for listening again, watching, whatever it is you do. Fuck Donald Trump, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye.